We're going to continue. I apologize. Maybe some of you missed the beginning of the introduction, but we're here with Byron Skaggs, who is a well-known international business consultant. To continue the Byron is passionate about coaching, advising, and speaking to decision makers, training on organizational growth subjects, including intercultural issues and leadership development, exploring social entrepreneurship, and using his networking ability to engage people, grow business, and to help others better their world. With that, once again, for those of you who may have missed my introduction, I'm Dan Bates. I'm President and CEO of the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. We thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to Byron and our guest, Jim Goodman from Municipal Brew Works.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that, and excited to be able to be here with all of you here and with people online. We have a number of our business colleagues and friends in the Middle East that have also signed on. We know that much. We may have others around the country or even in the area that just couldn't make the drive. And so that was part of the reason we wanted to be able to do this, was to be able to facilitate something in person and have the conversation together. But then also for those, if the hour drive or the 7-hour flight or the 7-hour time difference, we wanted to be able to provide this as an opportunity just to hear how we can take a book and some of the ideas in a book and what does it really mean to try to get traction in our own organization, in our business, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a business, whether it's an educational institution. And so we're really fortunate to have Jim Goodman with us from Municipal Brew Works right here in Hamilton. And we've invited Jim to kind of be a part of the conversation, in part because they are a couple years old as a business, 2.5 years old, but he's also familiar with Simon Sinek and the Start With Why, and so we've already had a few conversations. I'm like, oh, this is going to be really good. And my fear is, and hope, is that we haven't just had all that conversation before we turn on the camera and the mics. So we'll have a good time. Do you want to say a couple things just as an opening remark?
No, you know what? I'm gonna follow your lead. Just a little bit about Municipal Brew Works. We are an ownership group of 5. All 5 of us have our regular day jobs, but it became important for us to start this project. We actually started on it in 2014, but all 5 owners come from different perspectives and different careers that all kind of fit together. I think it goes over really well, and we kind of talked about it. I think it can be a bit of a slow-moving monster to get all of the decisions together, but I think when we all agree, I think the decisions that are made are very strong. I'm very much one of the why guys of the group. I'm actually kind of a fan of Simon, and this was the book, not to promote or anything, but a commercial, but we'll give it a little commercial there, but I'm a fan of him, and I thought the book really encapsulated a lot of the thoughts and the theories that we put together at Municipal Brew Works, and actually applied words to some of those theories, and they're like, oh yeah, that's what this is all about.
We gave some clarity to
it. It gave clarity, so that's really all I wanted to fill in.
Great.
Follow your lead.
Okay. And we have a number of people here, and I want to just kind of do a couple quick, what would you call these things? They're brief announcements of just kind of how we want to carry this forward. For those that are here live, we want to be able to field your questions or just to have you as a part of the conversation. So feel free to raise your hand. I am going to ask that you raise your hand and not just talk out, because the microphone apparently is quite sensitive. So we want to be able to acknowledge and bring you into the conversation that way. And for those of you that are online, we do have the ability to field your questions and answers, or the questions you have or comments that you might have. Tiffany is helping to moderate that. I want to say thank you to Laura for helping to be our director today. And so Tiffany and Laura, if something pops up, just let us know, and we'll field questions from those who are online and in other places. So, and also just if you are using a browser, I believe the question and answer area is down below, or maybe to your side, I think. Should be visible there. If you're on a mobile device, that's something where I think you actually need to either, I think, swipe up or down, and the area for Q&A will pop up there. So just wanted to kind of give that as clarity, and hopefully make that as easy as possible for you to be able to chime in and with your questions. And Dan, thank you for hosting it here. Really appreciate the chance to be able to do this with the Hamilton, the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and so this is exciting. This is our first time to do this kind of format, and so we're excited to be able to do this and introduce it with the book, Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why, and then we will next month jump in and do a book called Profit First. And every month through the rest of 2019, we will tackle another book and have another business owner and facilitate a conversation about what does it look like to take those concepts and principles and not really say this is how it must be, but what does it look like for my business, for our organization, and try to find ways to empower us to have tangible, practical steps to move forward in the growth of your business and the development and health of the community as a result of that. So let's just kind of dig into Simon Sinek's material. And did we get, okay, I am seeing that you do have some of the PowerPoint material. We're not going to necessarily go through the PowerPoint material straight through. This is more just as kind of as a resource, and there's some different graphs and charts and some different graphics that we may reference at different times. But the goal is just to kind of use this as some launching spots for conversation, and then we move forward from here. So the idea, one of the pieces that Simon Sinek pulls early in his book is this idea of the power of inspiration, and that inspiration coming from something that is truly a belief, a deep-seated belief in that person's drive, that why, that brings clarity to what they do. And one of the examples that he gives, that's a real clear example, is Martin Luther King's speech. And without reminders, without a calendar, without mobile phones, email, advertising, anything of that nature, does anybody recall how many people showed up in Washington, D.C. to hear his speech? Any guesses? 200,000.
2 million.
Not quite 2 million, but it was over 200. It was like 250,000 people, long before internet, long before anything else, and they came because they knew that he had a dream and had a vision, and that's what he was promoting. Simon Sinek actually makes a kind of a pretty popular or famous statement himself that says, if Martin Luther King Jr. had stood up and said, "Well, I have an action plan," not very many people would have gotten on board with that. They got on board with the vision and the dream that he cast, and somebody else actually came along beside him and implemented a plan to make it happen. So the idea is you start with why. You start with why are we doing what we're doing, and there in the process of the why, there's really two different types of influence that we see in business, we see in life. You really have two different types of influence. One is an influencer from a manipulation standpoint. And that manipulation standpoint is everything. When you think of business, you manipulate through pricing, through promotions, through discounts, maybe through peer pressure. There's all these different things that happen in business that we have just come to assume as business, but it's actually manipulating the buyer or the client or the customer to somehow like join in, and kind of scares them almost. There's sometimes you even have these, fear, using fear as a tactic to bring people in and to buy something. Security companies may actually play that very well, but it's that idea of, make sure you have bars on the windows or something, or, our car is going to sell all, we promote it because it has all these airbags, safety. What can we do? So those are the pieces, but that's manipulating the client to buy something. And manipulation only goes so far. It works, but it only goes so far. And so then what that does, it actually forces you to have a constant sense and a search for novelty. There's always got to be something new on the horizon, and you have to keep going and going and going, and that becomes a commodity. Think of cell phones. There was a time where cell phones were actually used and viewed as a premium piece that, only those who were really important, whether their company deemed it important enough for them to have a phone, especially if it was a bag phone that sat in the car that, that was wireless, and that was a prestige tied to that. And now a phone is a commodity, right? It's not so much the phone, it's what kind of access you can get with the phone. On the flip side is the inspiration. And the inspiration comes from that why. It's the loyalty that happens, not the transaction. You keep returning to the same place of business to buy things again and again because there's a sense of loyalty to that organization, and not necessarily that it's a simple transaction. There's less stress for the buyer and seller in that process when you can inspire somebody to be in partnership with you in that transactional relationship, that it's a inspired relationship. Then you are less stressed as the buyer and as the seller, because there's a relationship that's established, and there's a human factor that's much greater than simply the transaction. And then the other piece is that there's less dependence upon the idea of novelty, of constant change, to attract the customer or somehow entice them to return. So those are two different areas of influence, and so the idea is that the inspiration is what truly drives loyalty. That inspiration, that why, is what drives loyalty. So I kind of thrown a whole long, I think that was just one sentence, right? So now, Jim, I want to just kind of bring you into this conversation. Just in your process, you've discussed how the why has been actually a part of your conversations with your owners, and in the creation of Municipal Brew Works, there was a bigger why and a bigger reason for what you were doing. Would you be willing to share that with us? Sure. And how does that even kind of relate to, or where do you see some of these things of these two types of influences, manipulation and inspiration, that come into your work with the company?
And we do see kind of a combination with that, but if we want to really, I'm going to look at it from a broad perspective as the craft brewing industry as a whole. The craft brewing industry as a whole has increased nationwide double-digit percentages for about the past 5 or 6 years. In Ohio, prior to 2012, there was about 40 craft breweries in Ohio. Now there's over 200. The state changed its legislation in 2012 that made it easier. But really, what the craft brewing industry is about is a lot of this craft brewing culture. But what they do is we make beer. Not very exciting, but so does Bud, Miller, Coors, and a lot of these large, huge conglomerates. The craft brewing industry, though, embraces a culture. It embraces a culture of this buy local, drink local, shop local, using the platform of a tap room or a tasting room to bring people together, to commune. It becomes more than just about the beer. That was something that was very important to us. I live here in Hamilton, and I really enjoy the craft brewing culture. I enjoyed home brewing. Having someone that makes a product that you can talk to, that has a face behind it, that has a purpose behind it, whether it's a beer that the portion of the proceeds go to a particular charity or something like that, it becomes more than just the beer. And I think that became very important to us, and I wasn't seeing it here. Living in Hamilton, I wasn't seeing it here. In 2014, I was introduced to our head brewer, and it was kind of, if you're going to enter a business relationship with someone, it's basically like getting married. So that was our first date, and we kind of interviewed each other, and we wanted to know, really, what are your goals? What do you see out of this? Because if he comes to me and says, I want to be some huge mass production facility, and I want to put this beer all over the state of Ohio, and it'd be what do you swipe right or left when it's not good yet? I'm swiping the other way. It's gone. But because we both kind of saw it eye to eye, we both saw this vision of what we can do with Municipal Brew Works, we didn't even have a name at that time, but what we can do and what we feel what we can do is we can bring something to the community, an amenity to the community where people can really come together, enjoy themselves, and it becomes more than just about beer. Now, on the manipulation side, the interesting thing is to be relevant in the craft brewing industry. When you start getting into this hyper-localization is what I call it. There are now over 53 craft breweries in the greater Cincinnati area. And a couple are opening up soon, and it'll probably be 60 by year's end. So what you're seeing is this hyper-localization of folks really latching on to the brewery in their particular community. And the reason being is because of the why. That they are there for that community. It's not just about making beer. There's additional things. We're family friendly. We're pet friendly. We do fundraisers for the Animal Friends Humane Society and the Animal Adoption Fund, and we have beers for that are in honor of fallen firefighters. So it becomes more than just beer. So with this hyper localization, what sets you, while you have that, you still want to be a viable business and bring people from other areas to your place. And a lot of times what you'll do is you'll create the new beer style, the new adjunct that you put in the beer. That we have a peanut butter porter coming out this Friday. It's basically like a melted Reese's cup. It's a great beer. But we're doing that, we're releasing it on National Peanut Butter Lovers Day this Friday. So, but is that kind of a manipulation? Yeah, it kind of is. I think it'll be fun to have the locals come in, but maybe somebody from another community that has a craft brewery that they're particularly fond of near them, maybe they'll be willing to come and check us out because of that. So I think there is a little bit of that manipulation and inspiration that kind of goes together.
Yeah, it's an interesting, I mean, when you say that, then it's the kind of the notion that the inspiration may be what attracts the local connection and has the trust factor there. But to try to reach into or out to other areas, maybe some of the idea of manipulating or creating a novelty or something that then attracts them, with the hope that when they come in, then they discover your why without necessarily having to read it or have somebody walk up and say, hey, we want to tell you why we're doing what we're doing. But the idea is, can that why culture, whatever that is that you've created, can that be infused so deeply in the organization that somebody walks in from the outside, from another location, from another city, and goes, yeah, this is a great place to be. Yeah. And to get that sense. So that's I get it. There's some tension there, isn't there? To try to figure out how much do we want to go out, and then how do we still can work with the culture and that local piece. Let me just ask for the people that are here, this concept of manipulation and the inspiration, the why. How do you, are there other examples that you can think of? The list that you've seen there's several things on the manipulation side, a couple ideas, but do you have other things? As we were reading that off, was there other things that popped up in your mind of going, oh yeah, this idea or this methodology here is pure manipulation, but I don't have it listed here. What do you have other ideas? Yeah.
I would say one thing is people selling and buying on price alone versus a service. So, I'm in the promotional marketing advertising world, and some people want to not argue over, but go search online to find something 2 cents less.
Right.
And that's not what we're about.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of how do we serve our clients' needs versus pricing things. So I see the need and the loyalty that we develop with the relationship with clients as inspiration, and when we have to price something to compete, it's even more manipulation, whatever.
Yeah. No, and that's a great example of that battle between brick and mortar local and online. Travel companies wrestle with this and others, and where how do we still provide a service that people expect and manage that with the challenge of pricing if they're purely coming for the best deal possible, if that is their decision matter. So yeah, so this is where it kind of comes down to this question of how do we communicate the why, that inspiration piece behind us. How do we communicate that so that our customers, even if we are a little more expensive, they come to us because there is a trust human connection there, and it's not just a commodity. Yeah.
I feel that you have to have passion about your product, and the people will see that. And then, like, if you're passionate about it, then you add more value to it. And people, with every business, you're solving someone's problem. Like with the Hamilton Chamber, you're connecting with other business owners. That's solving a problem. With helping people with pricing, you're solving a problem. So if you're passionate about, like with brewing, then you're gonna look to get people that taste that they want. So you're providing value and you're solving that problem. So it's a yin and yang to everything. But if you're providing actual value, then the customer should be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's a balance between both.
Yeah.
And I'll speak to that because you're right. And I probably talked in the pre-meetings about, I think I talked everybody's ear off about the different beers that we were coming out with and things like that, because it's passion. I'm passionate about it. So they probably wanted me to quiet down a long time ago before this meeting because they wound me up and I just kept talking. But that's usually what happens. That's usually what happens in the tap room because I'm going to go out and I'm going to meet people there and I'm going to shake their hand. I'm going to thank them for coming in and they look at this old building that we brought new life to that at one time was the center of city activity, and then the building went abandoned and we brought new life to it. And when we saw it, we said, you know what, this used to be the center of city activity, and wouldn't it be great if we could do that again? So when people are willing to come into our place, I'm going to talk to them about it. I'm going to thank them for coming. And if they have questions about the building or how we utilized some of the space, you know, our boiler right now is sitting in what used to be the police firing range in the basement of the municipal building. There's a half-inch thick piece of solid steel mounted to the wall with 10,000 bullet plumes in it, and ricochets from the bullets breaking off, and sand on the floor from where the sandbox was. This is, I mean, it's that type of the extra level of detail that you can give, and people will they hear the passion in your voice and the detail that you can provide it. And what it does, I think it really supplies a context. And I think that's where the why comes in. The why really applies context to your what and your how. And when you can apply the context to it, it increases that customer's experience and it really galvanizes them to your effort. So,
that's a great piece of having that notion of the story, that being able to have that narrative of why we do what we do. And so much so that, I mean, you know, Dan, thank you. I mean, even in his intro of who I am, I want to start with, I believe that great leaders make better business, and better business makes for wonderful community. That the best way to have good community is to have great businesses within that community, and to have better businesses, you got to back up and empower the leaders to have better opportunities to build themselves up as leaders and to build their businesses up in ways that just totally revolutionize things. So that's the passion for me. So we have this kind of this opportunity where then if I share that first and foremost, then that becomes an opportunity for you to sit and think, yeah, I like that. I buy into that. And together we actually get work done. So that's a yes, comment or question.
Yeah, I think in listening to you, I also heard you were speaking to a greater vision. You were creating this vision and giving hope to people in the community and letting them dream alongside you and creating a better community and creating a community that comes together and celebrates what we are for who we are and what we've been and what we can become. I think that inspires people when you can speak to a greater vision and invite them to come alongside you in building that vision.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. And part of what we'll look at with the book here is what Simon talks about is this golden circle. And there's an image there that kind of has a whole bunch of stuff. But the golden circle is the why is in the middle, and then it becomes the how and the what. And the way he defines this is you start with that why and you work out from there. So your how and your what are actually informed by that why. Every decision that is made in the business is based on that why. That clear, succinct why. Why are we doing what we're doing? And then everything else is informed. So in other words, the why is actually could be related to the idea of people, of community, of culture. The how and the what, those are our products and services. So if we walk into a place of business or a networking event or someplace and simply walk in and say, well, I do this and I provide this service and I do that, we've gone straight to the how and the what. And we've not at all connected with that person as to why we're doing what we're doing. And so it's important. This is a challenge, I think, for me, and I wonder if it's a challenge for you as well. First thing we do when we meet with somebody, what do we ask? What do you do? We have a culture and a society that literally goes, we go right to what you do. And so we have to be intentional about saying, it's not what we do, it's why we're doing it. And so that's what we're wrestling with. One of the issues that comes up, and I'm going to ask you about this, is the why and the what and the how. Can you talk a little bit about? And I know you've read the book, so you can help feed this a little bit. But what is it about the how and the what that makes it so easy to communicate that, versus what is it about why that seems so difficult?
So one of the sections in the book that I thought was very interesting is he talks about just the physical makeup of the brain and how it's very difficult to take emotional responses and actually verbalize them. Mm-hmm. So you may have a why in your head, but it may be very difficult for you to get that out there because there is a physical disconnect when that happens. And when you get there, though, I think the what and the how just naturally fall into place. But the hardest part is the why, because our brains are not set up to actually take feelings and verbalize them. And I thought that was a very interesting chapter in the book. And I, think about whenever even just writing a Valentine's Day card. A few weeks ago was Valentine's Day. You're going to write something, so heartfelt, and it's like, be mine. Great. That doesn't quite work. But that's really what you're talking about, and it can be difficult. So, having the why, I think with us at Municipal Brew Works, I think the why is so embedded in the craft beer industry. It's not as difficult because there are so many together that have helped verbalize it and put it out there. And I think that's what got the buy-in from me early on. And a lot of my friends that are all craft beer drinkers, and we've been drinking craft beer for a long time. And it's never just about, hey, we're going to drink a bunch of beers today. You get a feel for what this company is all about, for what this brewer is trying to do. You get an appreciation for it. And because the brewing industry had expanded so much, and really for over the last 5 to 10 years, grown by leaps and bounds. I mean, if you look at the pure numbers of it, there were 4,000 breweries roughly prior to Prohibition. Prohibition comes in, wipes them all out. There's less than 100 for the longest amount of time. Now we're looking at there's 6,000 breweries in the United States right now, and another 2,000 in planning in the United States. So 8,000 craft breweries by the end of the year. Wow. But again, we're getting into that hyper localization where people want that drink local, buy local, eat local. And it's because of the why. I think the craft brewing industry itself has really encapsulated that why and helped promote that why, which made it a lot easier for us because I'm not smart enough to verbalize it. So it just made it easier for me going, yeah, I want to do that. I want to do that here. So that's how that all came to be.
So what I'm hearing you say, and this is it's interesting, is that you literally identified like a why that was already taking off and grabbing hold of communities around the country, and you just kind of grafted yourself into that.
Right.
Is that a fair assessment?
That is a fair assessment.
Okay.
I think that's what you do on the surface, on the top level. But I think if you just do that, then I think you're just riding the coattails and you're not individualizing your business.
Yeah. Okay.
I think what we did, it provided the inspiration. It provided a lot of the background of what we wanted to do because it was out there and we had related to it from a customer perspective. So from a consumer perspective, I was there. I'm in that camp of the craft brewing world and I'm loving it. But now I want to jump from the other side of the fence and be the actual proprietor of it. So how am I, with my fellow owners, how are we as a team going to jump that fence? And we're going to now embody that vision that we loved as a consumer. Now, how are we going to individualize that to our own why? And that's going to be, I think, completely up to that particular company and their location. With
the expression of that and how that,
exactly. So, for us, we're in Hamilton and taking over the old building and just really wanting to see this mentality of this rising tide lifting all the boats. We try and partner with businesses in everything we do because we feel that if they draw people and we can draw people and we can bring them into Hamilton, everybody does better. Every single one of our beer names has a story behind it. One of them is True West, which is our coffee porter. Well, we get our coffee from a local coffee shop, True West, and it's won medals at the Ohio Craft Brewers Cup. It's one of the highest acclaimed beers we have. And to me, I'm like, that's a victory. That's success. That's where we've collaborated. We've taken that overall why. We've kind of tailored it to our own thoughts and our own goals and perspectives, and we then took that to the next level.
That's great. That's great. So I'm gonna kind of turn this a little bit and away from the actual product to the people that you have who are your employees. And how do you begin to infuse that culture of this same why to your employees so that there's a sense that even if you said earlier there's 5 owners and you all are still working full-time in other locations, I would guess that there's chances where one or some of you may not be on site when the brewery's open.
Sure.
So how do you translate that why and that passion and the purpose for what you're doing into your employees, and what kind of things have you found that helps to motivate them to stay in alignment with that why?
Sure. Well, one of the first things we did early on was we did hire a taproom manager, which would be kind of the mouthpiece from the ownership group to our employees. And we wanted to make sure that they weren't getting mixed signals from each owner. Well, this owner wants to do this or that. And then the employee can get frustrated and they may be a great employee, but now they don't want to work for you because they're getting contradicting information every time they show up. So we really wanted to make sure that whatever message was coming from us was coming from one person, and that person was going to reflect what we as a group wanted. But I think what our employees have seen is the way that we really try and embrace that why. Each owner tries to do it, and we promote it through our company goals. We told everyone, we said, we have 3 objectives, and it's make great beer, and that's a what? But the second goal is to establish strong community roots, and the third goal was to educate people on beer, and that helps us with our why. It is a what, but it helps kind of embolden our why. There is a program called the Cicerone program, and a Cicerone is to beer as a sommelier is to wine. So they are beer experts. We require everyone that works in our tap room to be a level 1 certified beer server in the Cicerone program. And what that does, I think it shows our employee that we mean business. We're serious about this. We want to increase that customer's experience. We want them to feel comfortable when they come in. So we are going to provide them with an environment where they will feel free to commune. We will provide them with events that will help embolden and empower other organizations, whether it's philanthropic organizations or whatever the case may be. We want to partner with other local businesses to help promote other local businesses. So the employees see this, but we also want them to know their value to us in our goal of educating people on beer. Because we said, if every decision we make as a company is based upon 1, 2, or 3, or all 3, or a combination of those objectives, we're going to be fine. Because it again, when we had the why in place, the what of those company goals becomes easy. There's an easy transition there.
Yeah.
And the decisions we make, as long as they're entailed with the what, it automatically filters into the why. And I think that just creates momentum. And our employees see that, they feel that, they know that they're part of it. They know that they're part of a revitalization program that's going on in this city. And it has been an absolute joy to be sitting on the front row to see everything that's been happening around this town.
Yeah.
And just to even, I don't want to be too much of a pain here, but to say it's nice to feel like we've contributed something to that. And that, I think, is this rewarding experience where now the why is there, but you're also getting the feedback of the positive nature of it.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, question?
Yeah, I have a question. Jim spoke to a little bit on the employee side. When you talk about communicating the why, do you communicate that because you're looking for people who have a similar why, or are you looking to communicate so you can try and bring some people over to the same why that you have? Is it more about reaching the people that have the same belief as you, or trying to convert some people to the same line of thinking that you have for your business?
I mean, that's a great question. I think the idea of communicating your why, I mean, that's truly from a level of feeling from that part of the brain. I mean, Jim had mentioned this idea that this isn't what Simon Sinek created, or this idea that he created in the book is not actually just his opinion. It's rooted in some biology to how our brain functions. And so the why component comes from the limbic part of the brain, which is all about our feelings. And that's part of why it's so hard to get around some sort of clarity in that, because a lot of times our feelings are jumbled. And we're not exactly sure if we have clarity on what we're actually feeling in a particular moment. And so, and then what you do is when you move out of that, the how and the what actually come from a completely different part of the brain that it's very easy to talk about, because that's that part of the brain that is also the how and the what is also the part of the brain that controls our speech. So those things are very similar. Now, when you're asking, are we looking for people who are like-minded? I would say absolutely. If you can establish that kind of clarity about the why you're doing, that generates a type of feeling that people who believe the same thing or connect in that same way, there will be a natural attraction and a magnetic piece to that. Much like what Jim was saying, that in the culture of the craft brew community, people walk in and there's almost a sense like they automatically connect with that. Whereas there may be others who it may be a first time experience, and that may be something that they kind of go, oh, I never thought about this or felt this way before, and now I'm gonna, yeah, I can align with this. So I think it's kind of a both and, if that makes sense. You certainly will find natural connections where, as you talk to people, you will have that opportunity to align real easily. And then there may be other people who go, good for you, that's not me, and that's okay. The clarity of that means that right away you know whether or not that's a potential customer or a client, because if they go, yeah, that's not me, okay, but no hard feelings. It's it's good. Yeah, did I answer that okay? Is that okay? Yeah.
How how difficult do you think it is for people to be honest with themselves about their why? I think we sometimes paint the why in noble terms.
Sure.
But I think, you know, we can all do that. I want to help people by selling cars, placing them in the best, you know, I'm not picking on that, but,
Sure.
you know, but maybe the why is really, I want to make the biggest amount of money I can make.
Yeah.
And not that that's a horrible thing, but I mean, how often does that type of thing happen? Is the why always noble? Can it be anything?
Can it be greed? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or any other, you know, thing we perceive as negative.
Right.
Is that the if I do this, I'm gonna rob the bank?
Yeah, you know.
I have a brother who fits in that category
Okay.
really well. So.
Well, and that's part of the challenge. I think where we will, let me back up and say, if you're just doing the how and the what, it is perfectly possible for you to be successful. My understanding from the concept of why means that when the going gets tough and everything else is falling away, you have a drive and a passion that will carry you through for an infinite part of the game. That business is an infinite game. And that if you fall away, it's because you've lost the will or the money wasn't there. And so the concept of the why truly goes down to a deeper thing. And we may have people who will be very successful and not ever care about their why. And they you know, they sell a commodity and then they just go to the next commodity and they go to the next commodity. And if that's what they want to do, that's great. But the truly great businesses that we see, and Simon Sinek uses one of the examples he uses is Apple. And so I'll just kind of throw that out as a part of the model is this was a company that said, you know, we're about the individual. We're about thinking differently. We're about, I mean, if you think back to they were actually the first Super Bowl ad that revolutionized advertising for Super Bowls in the mid 80s. And it was this person running into this thing with a huge sledgehammer and throwing it at this screen and everything shattered. And it was all about this individual success. And when you think about it, it's iMac, iPhone, iPod, iPad, iBook. It's about the individual, right? So much so that I has become one of their components that has led them into that. That even when Steve Jobs left the company got really fuzzy. They lost their why because he was the mouthpiece. He was the vision. He was the one who was driving that. And now the jury's kind of out. He's passed away. Is the company going to continue to carry that on, or is there going to be some fuzziness there? So I think it's that notion of, yeah, people can actually function without knowing their why. But to be a truly great company that revolutionizes an industry or revolutionizes, you know, a number of things in that component, to have their own why that drives them in that way is what really sets them apart from the other businesses. Does that make sense? I don't know if that, you know, because that is a component where, yeah, I mean, if you're just out for the money, okay, but as soon as that money dries up, you're going to go somewhere else, and that's this is looking at, you know, organization or business health in a very different way of saying we're digging in and we're going to really push through because of the purpose and the why behind what we're doing. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Do we have any questions or comments that are popping in from online? I know we do.
A lot of people checking in.
Okay.
That they're viewing. Going back a little bit, Sherry from Pedals and Wick said that they personally prefer the experience with the customer and creating loyalty rather than some retail businesses are doing, you know, the flash sales and to sell something quickly.
Well, and you can tell her that my wife loves the candle, and I will be coming back by with the mug that we got from the Hamiltonian to refill it with a new part of the candle. So exactly that very thing. So yes, go ahead.
That was it.
Oh, okay. So if you're online and you're watching this, I do want to ask too, just in this concept, we've kind of introduced this, and maybe just I'll try to ask by a raise of hands in the room too. But I'm going to ask a couple quick questions, if you can identify and just help us to know where you are in this process. And so I'm just going to kind of throw out a couple things. So, and you can just type in, you know, how you assess yourself. This concept of why, is this the first time that you've heard of this and you don't even know what your why is? The second one would be, you've heard of this and you're trying to figure this out. So like the first one's not at all. Second one is, I've heard of this, but I'm still trying to identify what my why is. The third one could be, I know my why. I know what it is. And the fourth one could be, I know my why, and now I'm trying to figure out how to help the rest of my organization capture that why. Because there are different levels. So I'm kind of curious for people who are in the room, if you were to say, this is the first time I've heard of this concept and I don't know my why at all. Is anybody at that level here? Okay. There were no hands for that, so that's good. Not that it's good. I'm just, you know, it's information, regardless of whether it's good or not. So that's so the second thing is, what was it? I've heard of the why, and now I'm just trying to figure it out. Okay, all right. How many of you in the room would say, I know my why? I have total clarity of vision for I know my why. Okay, great. And then how many of you would say, I know my why, and now I'm trying to figure out how to help the rest of my organization or people or, okay, all right. So locally anyway, majority of the people had, I know my why, and now I'm trying to figure out how to get my organization on board with that and to wrap around that. So this is a good thing, and I'm going to kind of lean into this a little bit then. So I kind of jumped ahead a couple slides on the biology piece and talking about that, but let me slide backwards to the idea where it talks about it's the slide that says a different idea and the golden circle, and it shows the golden circle with a couple different like cones next to it. So the idea behind this is what Simon Sinek said. He started with this golden circle, the how, the why, or the why, the how, and the what. Now he turns it and says this isn't two-dimensional. This isn't flat. There's actually a cone shape to this. And at the top is your leadership, and it's your leadership that promotes the why. When you think about it, it's your Steve Jobs, it's your Bill Gates, two totally different kinds of people, right? And yet they both were driven by a why for very different reasons, and they've developed businesses for very different reasons. Let's look at Bill Gates for a second. Bill Gates, I would say, is probably an introvert. I mean, he really is. He's not that outgoing person that you would think of like Steve Jobs. But what he created was his goal, his why was literally like power to the people, power to everybody, empowering everybody to look and act and design a letter, a spreadsheet, you know, graphics, a presentation like a PowerPoint. I look back this way, that's not there. But, you know, I mean, something of that nature, so that an individual in a room with that could look as if they were the biggest corporate company in the world and compete on the same level. That's what Bill Gates was about. He was about creating Windows, about an operating system that went everywhere and empowered everyone to have access to a computer. Whereas Steve Jobs was about the individual thinking, you know, how do we do it so that we empower the individual? Slightly different things. What do we see now with Bill Gates? He's left Microsoft, more or less, and he lives out his why in a very different way. Through his foundation, through the money that he gives, he's literally empowering and giving access to people to, you know, relieving and alleviating disease in Africa. That is still his why. The methodology changed. The what and the how changed. But as the individual, his personal why drove the company and now drives that foundation. So you as the leader of your organization need to think in that way. It's me, it's my DNA, and I just hit the mute. It's my DNA, it's my why that's driving it. So that's an interesting, I mean, when you think of people like that, so having said all of that, you're all kind of thinking through, going, oh, that's where I want to be. I know my why, excellent. Now, how do I take it and help my company. One of the pieces that you kind of alluded to earlier, we were talking about employees. Do you have metrics in place that oftentimes metrics, you know what metrics are, right? So the things that measure your success in your business. Do you have metrics in place that actually move your employees toward the why?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, what we do, we have our meetings with our employees, and basically every time we have some sort of fundraiser or whatever the case may be, we kind of give them a why of, hey, we're doing this because we think this is important for whatever aspect. It's funny, the Petals and Wicks, hi, she posed a question earlier, but it was a couple weekends before Valentine's Day, and I said, you know what, we need to do a local package. So we put together, it was a gift box of our beer with a candle from Petals and Wicks and a goodie box from the Ullman Sisters Bakery here in town and a bud vase flower from Two Little Buds Florist in town. And we marketed it as a total package. And we told the employees about this, and we said, this is just a chance for all of us to work with some of the other businesses around here. So we didn't really have, I think the metrics that we would use would more or less be the continuation of the events and the plans and the partnerships and the things that we develop, whether it's fundraisers or, or local packages where we're trying to pair with local businesses for whatever special event. That helps promote, as long as we continually push with that. Not only are we supporting our why, but we're also, in my opinion, I think we're kind of putting our money where our mouth is with regards to our employees. We're showing that we are truly passionate about this, and this means a lot to us. And with us continually doing that, and we like to have at least one thing going on every month. And sometimes we have more, but at least one thing a month. That's when I think it kind of helps our employees understand that's our what we're all about. So.
Does anybody here, or maybe somebody online, have something where they want to, express how do you have a metric in place in your business or organization that speaks to your why, that literally is that connector to the why? And I have an example I can share, but I want to hear from you first, as if there's anybody that says, oh yeah, we have something like that.
I think that's the biggest challenge. I think that, converting that why that's kind of in my head to the organization, because our metrics are really the how and what,
Yes.
As opposed to, the why. So, I think a big challenge for us anyway is how you make that leap. I know why we're doing everything we're doing in my head. Conveying that to the team in a way that they can get on board with that, and we can actually say, okay, everything we do ties back into that. If it only is in my head, then it's not very successful for the organization. So I think that's a big challenge.
Yeah, it is. It is. One of the examples that comes to mind is a collection agency that was in California, started by a lady who had been a part of a collection agency at other places. And if you're familiar with collection agencies, if you've ever received a call from them, they typically are ones that are not the nicest people on the phone. They're the ones who are calling and trying to figure out, where's my money, where or you've not paid for the car or for the loan or for whatever, and we're here to collect, and we're going to harass you and harass you and harass you. And this lady realized what was going on in that call center was actually in violation of her own personal values and her personal why. And yet she still loved this industry and saw a potential opportunity to do something different. And so she left that company, created a new collection agency, trained everyone in the same manner that she wanted to be treated on the phone, where they actually develop a relationship with the person that they're talking to and spending time to try to understand why they're actually not making the payments on their loan. So much so that their metric, one of their metrics became the number of thank you letters that their caller sent out to the person that they just talked to on the phone. That was their metric. Not how much money did you collect, it was how human did you make that person feel. You see how that just one simple thing turns that whole conversation on its head. And that company has outperformed all other debt collection companies in their market, because people are actually they feel like they're, even in their hard times, they're being honored for who they are and being human and being treated differently. So I'm going to kind of bring that back around and say, okay, so for those opportunities, those connections that you've had with people, what could be a possible way? And it could be something very simple, but a way to say, hey, this is our why. This is why we want to be here, and the part of the community we want to do, or how we want to promote the community. Therefore, this little thing, we extrapolate this little idea, and your bonus, your incentive, is based on how you perform in this particular area. Something to think about. And it can be challenging to try to, take, okay, we know what our why is. Well, first we've got to be able to get it out of our head, right? And get it on the paper. If it's not written down, it's not real. So trying to, and keep pressing in on that and dig into. Let me just say this. I have a kind of a blueprint worksheet that speaks to core values. And as a business owner, as a leader in your organization, having your core values and identifying what they are, that really speaks to your why. So if you would like a copy of that worksheet, it's just called a, I totally blanked on the name of it, but it'll help you identify your core values and your why. We will send that to you. We also have a summary of the book, of Simon Sinek's book. We will send that to you as a PDF. So you'll be receiving two things from us. And that core values piece is something that you can use, just a little worksheet. And if you have questions with that, feel free to reach out to me and be happy to talk to you about that and help kind of process that if that's something that you would like to get clarity on. So just even as we've talked, has anything kind of popped up that you're going, oh, now that you're saying it that way, here's a metric that would be fun to, what would work for you?
So I think a lot of it with us on the social media aspect is, positive reviews through social media, whether it's Facebook or whether it's Yelp. And Facebook especially, they kind of changed their algorithm and how they do the reviews. Now it's would you recommend, but it used to be how many 5-star reviews, and you could give 1 through 5. And when we were at, when we eclipsed 300 reviews, we had 99% of our 300 reviews were either 4 or 5-star, and 92% were 5-star.
Wow.
So to me, that was telling me, okay, you know what, our folks that are there one-on-one with the customers are in lockstep with us for what we envision this to be and what we think it can become.
Yeah.
And now that they're doing the recommends, I think now we're over 700, and I think it's we're like 4.999% recommend the brewery as a place to go. So just from a social media aspect, of course, some folks, you get the haters online, but I think they can kind of get washed out if we try not to put too much emphasis on one or the other, because one of the other things that the book talks about is how you can lose your why, how you can achieve success and lose your why. So while we love to see that and we appreciate that as a metric of do our employees involved with us, and are they lockstep with our why? I never want to get complacent with that. So it's good for now, but now today existed months ago. We have to continually look forward. So.
Yeah. Well, and a good example of how a business is moving and continue to work their why is if you hear somebody say, we're better now than we were 6 months ago, and we will be better in 6 months than we are today. So it's that concept of constant improvement, assessing where we've been, realizing the places that we've done really, really well, and then moving into the next phase, all in alignment with the why. And that's a piece. So we're going to slide forward, Laura, a couple steps to this the biggest challenge and the success, and that's a graph that we have as a part of the PowerPoint. And the example is Walmart. The owner of Walmart, founder Sam Walton, he created Walmart to be a community support business. And so his why was really strong about the people and about the community. And so in that process, the what and the why were in alignment. When Sam Walton passed away, the why faded out. And the next person that came in as CEO was all about the profit, was all about the numbers, and the why disappeared or became fuzzy. Now, it took a couple of years. But now, today, when people talk about Walmart, it's usually in kind of a negative term, that they're not treating their people well. There are communities who literally are banding together and say, we don't want that store here. Where years ago, they wanted that store in town. They wanted that because he was bringing the big city to them. But they've lost their why, and they've continued to see some what and the growth in that, but the disparity between, and that's Simon Sinek calls it the split. And when that split happens, most often it happens when the CEO changes, because the CEO is at the top of that cone, is at that cone structure, and that CEO needs to be the megaphone of the why, that vision of the why. And if they lose that, all they have to go with is what. And if you hear a company or somebody saying, well, we need to return to basics, what they're saying is that return to basics is we've got to figure out how to get that why back in alignment with our what. And so that fuzziness is, that lack of clarity with the why is a problem. And that's actually where we see, major companies who were wonderful 10 years ago are no longer around because they totally split and lost that. And so that is a challenge. So to bring that back to you and your leadership, have you had those kind of conversations to say, okay, now granted, I recognize you're 2.5 years in. Yeah. But even in 2.5 years, I would encourage you, if you haven't, but I would hope that you do have some sort of exit and succession plan for your ownership. Mm-hmm. So when that ownership, if there is a transition and change, a part of that conversation is, how do we maintain that why when this particular mouthpiece of ownership, whoever that person is, leaves the company? What do we need to do to maintain this why and keep this in place? Most often, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, you had a person who was the why, and Paul Allen was the how. Paul Allen could implement what Bill Gates wanted to get done. Steve Jobs and Wozniak, same thing. You had a why and a how. And many times when the why leaves, either passes away, leaves the company, whatever else, they replace that person with a how. And that's where the split happens and the company starts to struggle. So it's an intentional thought process of keeping a mouthpiece at the top who can cast the vision and move it forward, and then bring other people around in alignment who then fill in that structure down below. any comments or questions as we've kind of been going through? I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads, but I'm hoping that's not nodding off. I realize that for us here, it's over lunchtime and actually probably dinner time if they're in Cairo. So, any comments or questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'm just, because I was one of the people that were nodding my head, so I feel like everything that you're saying is correct. The why is the vision, but the what is like the goals. So like you can just, if you don't have that vision for your company, then it's just like, it goes like the TV cutting off. But like, you can still do this. It might work in a different way, but you have this how you can still sell it, but you won't have that vision on that TV, so it has no value. So
Right.
the why is like where we're going, and like be able to create this environment, but then actually like put in the steps on how to get it there. So I pick up with everything that you're saying, but the why is the most important part. I feel like that why, just for me being an entrepreneur, that it keeps you going. Like when I started my first company, it was just to inspire others, and it's just like when I started making money, then that it wasn't my why. So then I wanted to find a way to how to provide like opportunity and create something that they could do for themselves. So
Yeah.
I got into mentoring, but that was just a part of the why. So it just kept going. And if you have that vision and you don't lose it and you start thinking about how, then it can just continue to elevate.
Yeah.
So
Thank you. I mean, that is really, I mean, like you're saying, that idea that the why is what keeps you motivated and keeps you moving when things get difficult. When you look at maybe your P&L statement, your financials, and going, okay, wait a minute, this isn't exactly where I wanted to be right now. But the why is what pushes you forward and continues to give you clarity. And the what and the how, that may totally change. You may find something that works maybe in this arena, and then in a couple of years you may find yourself over here, but it still informs your why. And as long as you're still focused on that why. So let me just, one thing that I want to kind of step back to, the why. Let's make sure that the why is not just marketing shtick. That the why is not just something we put on a brochure or on our website to make people realize, oh, we're good. The why needs to be truly what you are believing in and what you will not violate for any decision in the company. We have an online question.
A
Or
comment,
yeah.
Carol Lucio said that she loved that explanation of the why and the how being in proper alignment.
Okay, thanks. I would love to take credit for that. I'm just the mouthpiece for what Simon shares in the book. So there is also one other thing, and how much, I do not have a watch, so I'm okay. So the one thing that I wanted to kind of highlight too is this idea of the celery test, and that's a couple slides earlier. And this idea of the celery test is when you try to think about how to take your why and convert it into the what. Does that mean you just say yes to everything? Or do you actually use that why to inform how you make decisions in the company? And the metaphor is this. If I were to say to you, you need Skittles or M&Ms, and you also need Coca-Cola, and you also need potato chips, and and pick up some celery, and then while you're down the cookie aisle, grab some Oreos, and then maybe some milk, and now you've got a whole armful or a basket full of these things, and you go up to the register. And what if your why is to be healthy? But if I look in the basket and I see all of these things, there are a lot of things in there that won't actually lead to your physical health, right? It's confusion. Your why and what are confusing. There's lack of clarity there. If I see all that in the basket, I don't know what you actually believe to be, or that you're actually believing your why. Now, if you walk up with a bundle of celery and a thing of milk, that's alignment of your how with your why. This is health. This is healthy. This is good for me. Does that make sense? So it's this idea of how do we take our why and then literally distill out of that every decision that we make is informed by that why, so much so that somebody sees our product or our service and it feeds right into the why. It actually makes that alignment so simple. Do you have something you'd like to share with that? I realize I'm
No, that's
got
right.
into this mode and I wanted
It kind of goes back to what I mentioned before. I said as when we knew what we wanted to do as a company, and we established our why, the what kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
And it was every decision that we make as a company needs to be based upon one, two, or all three of these what objectives. And it was make great beer because we want that product. That product needs to be great.
Yeah.
No, do not compromise. If we're making a product and it does not meet our quality standards, we will put it down the drain. It hurts, but the end result, if we kept it, would be much worse.
Yeah.
Be uncompromising to that. Establish strong community roots. To get to that why of what we're really looking for, we want to make sure that our place is welcoming. We want to make sure that that customer experience is there, that our why and our passion of what we're trying to bring to this community is tangible. It's there in everything we do. Our beer names have a story behind it. You know, we want to be pet friendly, but we've got dog biscuits that are made with all the spent grains from our brewing process, and it's made by kids with developmental disabilities. You know, we want to, everything we do has an extra story to it, to bring the community together, to establish those strong community roots. And the third was to educate people on beer. So it's the make a great product, establish community roots, educate people on your product. And if we said that if every decision we make as a company is based upon one, two, or all three of those objectives, it does nothing but fuel the why.
Yeah. Well, and that's just, I mean, you know, when I asked you earlier, kind of press on what are your metrics for your employees? You know, those three things that you've identified, if they grow in those areas, those are the metrics that could be a part of the incentive piece as a possibility. You know, maybe they continue to improve in their own ability to educate others. Would you say level one or level? You know, are there levels that are higher? And that, you know, I mean, you know, so if they continue to move in that direction, that could be a metric by which you know that's going to enhance your own business and the service that they provide. So that's an interesting way to kind of have that in alignment. So let me wrap up by just touching on one last thing, and that's near the end. And I want to talk about competition just for a minute. Jim, one of the things you've said but not said is the idea that you have all kinds of competition in this area. There is a growth of craft breweries in the greater Cincinnati area. And yet, I mean, I'm sure you know who they are, but you've not named them, and you've not basically pressed and said, well, ours is better than theirs, or anything else of that nature. Can you speak to what the why does for the nature of competition, and how Simon Sinek kind of talks about it between a finite game and an infinite game, or finite players and an infinite player? You know, speak a little bit to your industry and how that works in competition.
I think that in our industry, especially in the craft brewing industry, there is a camaraderie among all the brewers, because we know that if we do well, the others will do well. When we were in our planning stage, I had a local brewery who was 3 years ahead of us, and met with them at a conference, and they were genuinely interested in how we were doing. And they were genuinely interested in, when are you going to open? What are you going to offer? What are you going to, and I was kind of questioning, like, why are they trying to get corporate information from me, you know, trying to take this nefarious position? And it wasn't that way at all. They understood that if we penetrate the market in our area and we put out a good product in our area, then the people here would be more inclined to go across town and try them.
Yeah.
Because they see our why, they become experienced, and I think that's one of the reasons why I was getting a lot of the questions. They wanted to see if we were on the same level, and I think from an industry perspective, the craft brewing industry is very, very intertwined. They're very friendly to each other, and it is truly that rising tide lifts all the boats. And as a result, you see double-digit growth in that industry over the past every year for the past 6 years, because we're all together. No one down talks anyone else. If I know, and we've gotten multiple calls from local breweries about equipment that's broken, or you're shy on ingredients. Do you guys have any of this? Well, sure. Okay, I'll be over in a minute and pick up. And we do the same thing. If something happens, we will call a competitor or a quote unquote competitor and say, hey, we need 150 pounds of 2-row barley to finish this recipe, and our shipment didn't come in. Do you have some? Absolutely. One of our biggest selling beers, the hops we got from that beer was from a local brewery that had too much of it. They have a hop contract. We're not large enough to have one.
Wow.
So because they had too much and they offered it to us, that got us in the door with the vendor. We produced this wonderful product that people loved. And they want more of it. And now, because of that relationship that they provided to us, that allows us to now keep that product all the time. So while there is kind of this competitive nature to it, it's that look of our why, for the industry why, is really kind of joined to all of the breweries out there. It's probably more of I think it's probably more of a exception than the norm as far as industries go. But I think there can be some factors in play that are in the craft brewing industry that could probably be applicable to other industries, where yes, you have a competitor, but they know your struggles, they know your successes, they know your failures. And if you can exchange information and you can, help one another out, all of a sudden, everybody advances.
Yeah. No, thank you. I mean, that's fascinating just to hear the kind of the inner workings of that community and that culture, because that really does speak to the idea of it being an infinite game. And that's actually a new book that Simon's coming out with this spring. That shouldn't be saying that. That's a whole other advertisement for something else. But I'm really anxious to get my hands on it. But the finite game being something where a finite game is coming from that concept of scarcity. It's functioning out of fear. And when you're fearful, you really have a very binary thought process. It's either a yes or a no. It's a black or a white. And to live in a why capacity allows for creativity. The why capacity brings a sense of abundance. It comes from that mentality of, we have so much that we're happy to share, because as they grow, we grow. And it's that abundance mentality. And so the whole thing is we are pushing ourselves to be better, to meet our why, not pushing ourselves to beat them. Does that make sense? And so it could very well be that somebody walks up and says, we have a better product than you. Or if it's a potential client, I've just tried this. I just walked in and tried your beer, but you know what? I can go down the street and get a better beer. And for somebody like that, you could say, you know what? I'm sure you can, because we're not actually competing against them. Our why is this drive to create this culture. And if you buy into this culture, you're welcome to be here. I mean, it's not a thing where you're kicking them out, but it is a component of, I'm sure they do just fine down the street, but that's not our concern. And it totally revolutionizes how you think about the type of business you do, the work that you do, and the fact that this is an infinite game. So you could step out, and that industry is going to continue to move forward. But you kind of get into the stream and work with that. And so on a finite side, a business that is very finite and thinking in that very black and white, they literally put boundaries and fences around what they do. So they have to work within those boundaries. And an infinite player, an infinite business, an infinite game, there is no boundary. and we were playing with the boundaries and moving things and those kind of pieces. So it's a challenging concept that I still love to play with and try to figure out. Any other comments or questions as we're wrapping up here? And I'll give a little bit of a teaser to next month. But any comments or questions related to what we've discussed today? Yes.
I think some of the why, and I think one of the first things you said was that it has to do with loyalty and customers, and it relates to what you said, which is having a why or just being about making money, which everybody clearly has to make money in their business, but it's kind of, to me, more why am I doing this instead of what you're doing or what he's doing or what she's doing. But also, besides bringing loyalty and business in the door, I think when you said your why is about the community and doing what you're doing, I know people who go to Municipal and don't like beer because it's a part of this community and it's what they do. I don't love beer. I love to go there. And I know, other people, I don't like craft beer, but everybody's going to Municipal, so I should be going there. It is a part of the community, and that's the why, and it gets people there who don't even want your product. Honestly, and they end up using it when they get there.
Yeah.
But it's just really interesting that that's coming from you, that's the why, because it's people's stories that get involvement and connections and loyalty ultimately.
Thank you, because that's like a beautiful affirmation of, this metric of your why is actually being achieved, and people are showing up for that very reason, but they may not drink.
And they're with their friends who are drinking.
Sure. But it is that community sense. Yeah. Any other comments?
We have soda too.
Anybody else? Okay, I have a thinking thing for you here at the end, and it is one of the last pieces on the slide if you will see that. But I am just kind of curious if you've had some light bulb moments, some insights that you are taking away from today for how you might be able to incorporate this why into your organization or your business. And not just that it's a light bulb moment or an insight that you're taking away, but do you have an actual action steps? One action step that you want to take and say, I want to put this into place that's going to help move my business forward or my organization forward. And I'm going to just throw this out there. I would love to hear what that is. And if you're comfortable sharing it with me, I'd be happy to be able to spend some time talking with you, especially about that action step. Accountability is a huge thing, just in moving forward. Anything that we do, if we just keep it to ourselves, rarely does it actually get done. Even if we're inspired by a great talk, like we've had in hearing Jim talk about his work at Municipal Brew Works, we can leave from here and we're going to have emails, phone calls, and we're going to get right back into the weeds of what we do in our business. And so I'm asking and offering, I would love to hear what your action step is. And then that way, if you're okay with that, because here's the thing, you tell me and then I get to hold you accountable. So it's me kind of checking back in and saying, hey, how are you doing with this particular action step? But if you email me or call and leave a message, or if you're here, you come up and talk to me and share your action step. But sometime in the next 3 hours, in Cairo, we still have time before everybody goes to bed. So next 3 hours, send me an email and just tell me what your action item is, and we'll schedule a 90-minute coaching session. And I will give this to you for free to help you map out how to move forward on that action step and get traction in your organization, your business, or in your own workplace, whatever that environment is. Do that in the next 3 hours, and I would be happy to sit down with you, and we can do it online or we can do it in person and have a 90-minute coaching session. If it's after the 3 hours, you can still send it to me, and I'm still very happy to do it. But at that point, I'll have to charge you the actual $500 rate for the coaching session and moving forward. Okay. Any questions or comments as we're finishing up? Don't forget that 3 hours. There's a time limit there, but go for it. And I really do. I really want to hear this because that's part of my whole thing. Is I want to be able to, if you've got something, let's talk about it afterwards. Be happy to help
Over a
you.
beer.
Yeah, help you map out, what you want to get done and how to move forward on that. So next month, March 2019, and it's actually going to be March 26th. Today's the 26th. right? February. So March 26th. I believe we're going to try and do it at the same time. And the conversation for next month will be from the book Profit First. And it's the idea of transforming your business from a cash-eating monster into a money-making machine. We're going to get into some of that. If you want to turn a profit and grow your business, don't miss this conversation. So join the conversation in March, and we'll be talking about focusing on profit first. Really appreciate your opportunity to be here. I will be hanging around. Would love to hear what your action step is and where you're going next. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.